Welcome, I'm John Caldera, president of the Independence Institute and your devil's advocate. Later on, we're going to talk about, I think it's 73 on your ballot, number one in your heart, a tax increase on all your property and, well, also your income. But first, you know him, you love him, the editorial editor for the Gazette, Wayne Laugesen. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me.
All right, your editorial page went on a pretty interesting, shall I use the word, screed about the baker who is now being forced to bake a cake for a sexual transition or gender transition.
Right.
First of all, why do you hate these people so much?
Right.
Yeah.
So first of all, let's get one thing real straight. It's not about baking a cake. It's about designing a cake. Big difference. Huge difference. As far as our hatred.
Actually, let's stop there for a second, because
Okay.
I do want to get to your abundant hatred, because I've known you for years.
Right,
You're a hateful man. Yeah, I think there are people out there who think that what Jack Phillips does, or anybody who designs a cake, it's a commodity.
Right.
It's like you're going to McDonald's, I'm going to sell you a hamburger, but I'm not going to sell you a hamburger. Well, they're all the same.
Right.
But a cake, like a photograph or a painting or something else.
Or a book.
Which we don't think of a cake. I mean, you and me, look at us.
We just eat cake.
Yeah, cake is just
Right.
a commodity. We
Right.
want it. Some people actually put a lot of effort into what a cake looks like. He is a designer. So
He is.
this
And, you know, the founders could not possibly have imagined that we'd have big raging First Amendment battles about cake. I'm
Right.
sure they were thinking about books and pamphlets and newspapers and such. Or whatever, you know, whatever they could have envisioned into the future, but not cake. Because now we live in a world where cable TV has at least 5 competing shows about cake designers.
My daughter watches Cupcake Wars and this other English thing about the game where the reality show where they design cakes. Yes,
Right,
it's a
and
big
so
deal.
these are cake artists, and they're asked to express very specific things. And in this case, you have a cake artist who interviews the people he's making the cake for about the occasion and what's important to them, and he tries to throw himself into this and make an expression he really believes in and supports, actually. So it'd be kind of like going and saying, would you write a poem for me? Would you know, so you're asking for a creative expression. This same cake designer sells cookies and cupcakes and all kinds of commodity goods. And he had sold to that couple that came in who were celebrating their same-sex marriage many times, and he has designed cakes.
He'll sell them a cake. He won't artistically design a different cake. For
Right,
them.
and as far as I'm concerned, as far as I know, he doesn't have a problem with someone being gay. I believe he has made cakes for coming out celebrations. I discovered I'm gay. He happens to be, because of his religion, he happens to be opposed to same-sex marriage. Right. So he declined to. He didn't want to participate in expression of celebration.
Now let's take it from him to your hatred.
Right, my
to
hatred.
your homophobia.
Yeah. Well, a lot of people.
That's why the Gazette has come out so strongly against this, is because it's just focus on the family kind of stuff, right?
Well, the record says quite differently. A long record going back to, I've been at the Gazette since 2008, since January 2008. And when Californians passed Proposition 8, which really expressly said that we can't have same-sex marriages in California, we said repeatedly in editorials that you can find online probably to this day that is unconstitutional. The majority, the voter, does not have a right to come in and vote away an individual's right to freely associate or to contract or to love another person and carry on as if married. The voter doesn't have that authority. So we wrote that over and over again. And if you read the Ninth Circuit, I'm not necessarily proud of being aligned with the Ninth Circuit ever, but they were right on this one. Their ruling could have been lifted from a Gazette editorial if you compare the two. And I went on a radio show here in Denver, Kaplis and Silverman, and I think I scandalized Dan Kaplis at the time. But I just told him it's not about whether or not I favor same-sex marriage or think it's important or the board thinks this. That's irrelevant. We don't care. We're talking about the law here. We're talking about civil liberties. That's what interests us, is law and public policy.
Then let's bring it to the latest. All right. The one chapter with Jack Phillips is over and done with. And we just can't leave this guy alone.
No.
So now the Colorado Civil Rights Commission, I believe it's called, is targeting him again because he doesn't want to make something to celebrate a changing your gender.
Right. So a local attorney, a Denver attorney, who has been harassing Jack Phillips for a long time. This person, I won't mention her name. She used to be a man and has become a female. This attorney has gone in and asked, according to his lawsuit. Now, I'm not saying this is true. I'm saying that he tries to substantiate it in a lawsuit. That she's come in and asked for cakes to celebrate Satan, and we want Satan licking a 9-inch sex toy, a mechanical sex toy. And she does things that are obviously designed to provoke him and offend him. So the latest is she went in and she wanted a cake designed to celebrate the 5-year anniversary of her gender transition. And he didn't want to do that. He doesn't like it. It violates his religious beliefs. So she took that to the Civil Rights Commission. Now, this is a Civil Rights Commission that in June, the Supreme Court of the United States came out and detailed how they...
The word was hostile, wasn't
hostile
it?
to religion.
It wasn't that the Colorado Civil Rights Commission was wrong or incorrect or violent. The word was you are hostile to Jack
and
Phillips.
over and over again, at least a half dozen or more times, they said you violated his First Amendment rights. You violated his free exercise, the Free Exercise Clause. They detailed how the Civil Rights Commission committed a veritable hate crime against Jack Phillips. And if you read the ruling, you will not contest what I just said. If you read it objectively, the Civil Rights Commission is guilty of violating Jack Phillips' civil rights in a hateful way, hostile way, as they put it.
So that was case number one. Now they get a knock on the door saying, hey, we got another case we want you to look at.
Right.
And they're going to go look at it.
So they've not only looked at it, they've ruled on it. 24 days after the Supreme Court detailed how they committed a hate crime against Jack Phillips, they ruled on a case that had been brought to them the same day the Supreme Court agreed to hear the first case. And that was involving the attorney who demands things such as a sex toy on the cake and all of that. And she went and said, well, he won't design a cake for my anniversary of my sex change. And they ruled, 24 days after the Supreme Court, they ruled against Jack Phillips again. And he's supposed to go make this cake, and they'll probably put him through political re-education like they did last time.
When you said political re-education, what did they do to him last time?
They ordered him and his staff into sensitivity training and to study the civil rights law and all of this stuff. It was political re-education.
So I mean, this is post-Vietnam re-education camps. I mean,
exactly.
That's what we don't like what you say. We're going to treat you a different way. We're going to change your mind.
Change who you
at
are.
Gunpoint.
And
Fiscal
so
gunpoint.
What they ended up, for the past 6 years, Jack Phillips has not made wedding cakes. That was 60% of his business. He had to lay off 6 full-time staffers. He lost 60% of his business to this intolerance of his religious views. Now, this is not like somebody in the South, pre-civil rights days who won't rent apartments to black people. This is an artistic expression that one can find anywhere in town. It's not a commodity. Housing is a commodity. Cupcakes are a commodity. There's all kinds of things that are commodities, and to discriminate against anyone in that realm is, I think most people agree, is very wrong, and it's probably good that we have legal protections to avoid that kind of thing. On the other hand, when we draw something or paint something or write something or create an artistic cake, that is very much protected by the First Amendment. So are the views that might determine how you go about doing that. Expressly religious views.
Bring it to the Civil Rights Commission, because your paper said it's time not to investigate Jack Phillips, but this commission, how it's made.
That's right.
And what it does.
And it'll be a very
simple.
simple...
How is it made? I mean, what is the Colorado Civil Rights Commission? Because it is a warm and fuzzy name.
Yeah.
It's a Civil Rights Commission.
Well, it's supposedly a Civil Rights Commission, but it is actually used as a weapon to enforce certain values against other values, to sanction these values and demonize those values. So in this case, with the current commission, we are sanctioning progressive modern values and demonizing what we consider passé values that are not in style. So
what do you want to happen? What do you want?
Well, here's what I want to happen. First of all, the investigation, as far as the first case, is very easy. The Supreme Court, and you can't go any higher than that legally, has already determined what they did and said that they broke the law in so many ways. So that's already determined. But and one of the reasons they did that was because at the time that this was all playing out, someone went into several cake design shops and said, I would like a cake shaped like a Bible, and I would like this interpretation of a Bible verse on it. And it was a Bible verse that basically condemns homosexuality, or at least intimacy in homosexuality. Again, I have no feelings about that at all. But the order was refused. So again, on a basis of content and values, the cake order was refused. So that person, then to make a point, went to the Civil Rights Commission, and they said, oh, that's okay. Of course that person wouldn't design that cake. Now, what I would like to see happen that would be similar to this, it is almost encouraged these days in some of our schools. You know, we have come a long way as a society in embracing and accepting transition of gender. And so they were ruled in favor of the attorney on that basis because that is now acceptable and fashionable. Now,
so this committee gets to decide what values are in fashion.
That's what they're doing.
And if you violate those values that are now in fashion, you're in trouble.
When the First Amendment was written precisely to avoid that kind of thing, right. It was written to protect that which isn't fashionable. Okay, so anyway, it is okay to have a gender change, but what is really taboo is to get what is called therapy, conversion therapy, where you go from being homosexual to heterosexual, or so people claim. I don't know whether it's real or whether it works. Go ask for a cake design that celebrates a successful conversion therapy. It will be rejected by someone, rightfully so, and see what the Civil Rights Commission does with that.
All right, one more time though. What do you want to happen to the Civil Rights Commission?
I want the Civil Rights Commission to compensate Jack Phillips for the millions of dollars that they have cost him. They need to pay him in actual and punitive damages, whether this comes as a result of a lawsuit or legislation in the next legislative session. Either way, a federal investigation getting to the bottom of all of this would be very helpful toward that goal.
And what do we do with the commission itself? Is it time to kiss it goodbye? Because we can't. I believe it's in the Constitution.
It's time to either kiss it goodbye or completely overhaul the way that is composed, because right now it's very political. If you get a governor who, you know, happens to
let's jump to the punchline. That's great now when we have a governor who's very supportive of these progressive values, but when the Donald Trump becomes governor of Colorado and starts putting in a bunch of his friends from Focus on the Family, then the same rules will apply. Got to run. Wayne, thank you.